You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
Good morning, Eagles fans. Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron, high on coffee, alongside Zach Travalella, Eric Reese, and we're here. We're live. I kind of like these morning shows. Honestly.
We live. We hot.
Hot damn.
I do like the morning.
It's a WIP reference for anyone out there who still listens to sports radio.
I don't listen to sports radio. We are sports radio.
That is fair. We're
the new
radio.
sports radio.
That's how I put it. We are.
We should be
radio.
the sports radio, because I feel like, and you know what's so crazy? I feel like if PSN ever got to a realm where we had a studio and they put all three of us in a studio, I feel like Flipping the Birds will turn into like flipping the tables because of how chaotic it would be. And it just wouldn't be a serious show anymore. I mean, it's not a serious show.
Especially if we did like fantasy focused episodes, it definitely would be.
No, we're not doing that. Nope. It's 9:10 in the morning. Nope.
Ryan would be driving the show, and Zach and I would be leaving the show at least once a day. That's exactly what would be happening. And then Tim
would need the studio to be like round, that way we could just walk off in a circle.
We need to have a lock on the outside where we can't get out unless somebody lets us out.
And then there's another person in the room, Tim, who he would just be having a soundboard and different beers all day. It wouldn't be much going on.
He would have a beer board. I don't even know if he would have the soundboard. He probably
would have a soundboard. He'd probably be drinking his beer and then just making sounds anyway with his mouth.
Yeah,
that's probably what would happen. Yeah. It's probably what would happen.
So I mean,
nonetheless.
I feel like it's great that we're in a good mood, right? Because Sunday's coming, 1:00 Sunday. The Eagles will take on the red hot New Orleans Saints, and we're coming off a tough loss against the Falcons, where we saw a lot of questionable calls on both offense and defense, right? But New Orleans, let's talk about them for a second. Red hot. Derek Carr is in his bag at the moment. It seems like they're a team that's jumping on crazy leads within the first or second quarter and just taking it by storm through there. What are your players to watch on the New Orleans sides for the Eagles?
Well,
got it. Well, Zach,
if I can just say this, I don't even. I'll let you go first to that point, Eric. You know what? No, let me articulate.
I think we'll have the same player. So go ahead.
Well, so for me, this just seems like kind of a I don't want to say a catch-22, but call it like a thunder and lightning scenario of Alvin Kamara and Rashid Shaheed. Like, there's just
isn't that just like lightning and lightning? Not even.
It's kind of like lightning and lightning. It's kind of like lightning and double lightning. Like, it's just like you have like Alvin Kamara who can hurt you so many different ways, and the way the Saints have operated infuriates me because it's exactly what I want out of Philadelphia, right? And so that what I mean by that is, there's a lot of emphasis placed on the running attack and then working the play action pass, right? So that's something that Derek Carr has seen immense success this season. Like, everyone's talking about Kubiak like he's reinvented offense. He hasn't reinvented offense. He's gone back to the drawing board, right? Yep. He's gone back to old ideas of years gone by, back to basics, and it's thriving. Because New Orleans has explosive playmakers. Now, you turn to Philadelphia, do they necessarily have a guy in the receiving core who's as electric as Rashid Shaheed? I wouldn't say necessarily with A.J. Brown out. Even still, you're talking about having a guy like Devontae Smith. You're talking about having a tight end like Dallas Goedert. Obviously, there's Saquon Barkley, who is on that level, that Alvin Kamara level, higher than most seasons even. So, for me, defensively, how do you stop these guys? That's the biggest focal point is, it starts with stopping the run. That way you can limit that play action, because Alvin Kamara is the guy to watch, and then Rashid Shaheed, if Kamara gets hot, is right behind him.
And that's exactly it. Stopping the run, and that's why I was going to say we're going to talk about the same players. It's Kamara for sure. Kamara is who you're watching. And the Eagles haven't been able to stop the run. It doesn't matter if it's a combination of the Green Bay Packers using Jacobs and God for their backup. I forget their backup's name on the top of my head right now. But then you saw last week with Atlanta, Bijan was pretty much doing whatever he wanted to. What do you think is going to happen with Kamara? With teams that are actually decent at stopping the run, Kamara is still going to make his plays. Dare I say, it reminds me of like how a team has like its specific playmaker and they're going to make those plays, whether it's once or more than once in the game. Kamara is going to do it more than once. You're kind of going out of the way saying, hey, realistically, do you expect the Eagles to suddenly, stop the run? No, but you're expecting them to, not maybe expecting them, but you're wanting them to limit the damage, to mitigate it. So that's what it comes down to. There's got to be a focus on doing that. There's got to be a pass rush. There's got to be defensive coverage. There's got to be a resemblance of defense somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm.
And that means more so. I was fine for the most part by forcing field goals against Atlanta. For a lot of that game was Ben don't break, but it's got to be a consistent effort through what we saw against Atlanta the entire 60 minutes. So that's what we're looking for. And, the biggest piece, I believe, to stop, if you're going to name one player on the New Orleans offense, is obviously Kamara.
And it's funny that you say that, right? And I think the key word in everything you just said right now was consistency, right? When the Eagles faced the Packers, we saw them hold Josh Jacobs within the first 2 quarters to very limited amount of yards. When we saw them face the Falcons, they held Bijan for the beginning parts of the game. But it seems like there is no consistency on the defensive side because the moment they hold the running backs, they let the pass game flourish. When they let the pass game flourish, they pivot to stop that, and then they let the run game flourish. And there's no healthy balance right now within Vic Fangio's scheme, and I think that's what's very frustrating because we're seeing. I was thinking about this morning, like the offense isn't hitting on all cylinders right now for the Eagles, right? Because we're missing AJ. They're confused as to what plays should be called or who should be the target in the passing game. But they're doing their job at the end of the day, I feel like. The offense is doing their best to do what they can at the very moment. Defensively, though, they're not doing the offense any favors because they can't stop a nosebleed right now because there is no balance. Zach Bond, he's been the more consistent player as well as Quinyon Mitchell. But outside of that, like, these open pockets in the zone defense is unacceptable. Like if Avonte Maddox doesn't have the awareness to know who's around him, then you got to just cut bait, put Isaiah Rodgers in there, Cooper DeJean, whoever it is. There's got to be somebody that can do his job better than he's doing right now. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Like there is no consistency, at least in my opinion, on the defensive side. Something's got to give at some point. And if it was going to happen in any game, it's got to be this game.
Yes. Let me ask you guys a question real quick, and I'll answer it first just to send it around the horn real quick.
Mm-hmm.
How many days did it take for you guys to kind of get back into a good mood after that loss?
Today.
Yeah.
Yes,
because what? Because it's tomorrow and then there's another chance.
I think it's a culmination of just like you have to deal with it's a Monday night game. You got to deal with emotions on Tuesday when we have our show, right? Then on top of that, you're still dealing with the emotions on Wednesday, and it bleeds over into Thursday. And when you finally start getting right about Friday, it's kind of like, okay, they got the Saints coming in, and you kind of talk yourself to saying that, hey, walking the plank isn't too bad. The water's not that deep until you got to jump into the water and you realize it's it's deeper than anything out there.
I'll say
just
bold
of you to assume that I'm over it, that I'm happy.
Bold of me to assume.
You're smiling, though. You're smiling.
I spent yesterday depressed, and I have no better feeling about tomorrow. It's a dark time.
Isn't it so crazy that Philadelphia Eagles football can affect your emotions this deeply as a fan or even as like an analyst?
It's rough, dude. It's rough.
I had to put a hard cap on it. I had to put.
Well, you're a Mets fan, so like you're just kind of numb at this point.
I'm numb to it. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I had to put a hard cap on it, so I will say that it was pretty much Wednesday this week where I was just like, all right, well, we know the thousands of variables that, if you just did one thing here at this scenario and let the rest of the game play out as is, maybe they don't lose, maybe they're 2-0. Like, I play that game all the time, but I think it's a fair game to play because you do look at the game and go, wow, literally one thing, literally, kicking a field goal and making it would have got you the win, as ugly as the rest of the game was. But you look at all these variables and you're just like, well, hopefully they learn something from it, and then you move on to, opponent that's going to be absolutely harder than the Atlanta Falcons. I saw a couple commercials, by the way, with Atlanta. Like Lil Jon was doing a commercial.
Oh,
they were like, we got Kirk Cousins. And I was like, see, if they never beat the Eagles, if they just, they wouldn't be talking about they got Kirk Cousins. Sorry. No one's ever talked about they got Kirk Cousins, and then you got Lil Jon saying, yeah, and what, and all that stuff.
Not with positive inflection anyway. You
that's
hear them
what
talk
I mean.
about,
Yes.
we got
That's,
Kirk Cousins.
That's what I mean, Zach. Lil Jon is the only one that's ever, well, actually, it is kind of ironic that the only person that's ever hyped up Kirk Cousins is the hype man of, like, all hype, and it's Lil Jon. So,
that's what he does. That's what he gets paid to do.
That's very true. And then, I mean, do you feel like, and maybe I know it's early, it's only week 3, right? But like coming into this season, like I feel like a lot of teams have their identity, right? They know what they want to do. It seems like the Eagles don't know what they want to do, and it's spilling over into the season from the off season. Like there's no identity. Like they on offense, what are they? Are they a ground and pound? Are they air raid offense? Like on defense, what are they? Like there's no identity. And I feel like until this team actually finds their identity, there's nothing's good gonna come from it at this point.
I think there's more of an identity on offense, and I think the identity crisis has a lot to do with A.J. Brown and being inactive. That's balanced, I think, the offense. I think you have the opportunity to make the plays downfield with Jalen's arm. I thought there was opportunities to still do that on Monday night. But that being said, obviously with Brown out of the lineup, the identity is going to be more of running the ball and, seeing where that takes you. Now, against the Saints, will you be able to do it as like you did against the Falcons? Probably not. Maybe, but probably not. So you're going to have to rely more on, your receivers. Now, going into this game, you're going to have Smith as your number one, clearly. Barkley, we can talk about that play and how, he was open on that pass and it was just a drop. But Barkley is, going to be another option in this, receiving this, tomorrow at 1. But what you hope to see is, if you're not going to use him, why did you trade for Dodson? Like, you want to see the ball spread around.
Did you see unscripted by the Eagles? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Did you guys see that at all?
No, I did not.
So, and this feeds into you, and you take over after I say this, but in unscripted, Nick Sirianni in the beginning is talking about everybody playing their role. And when it comes to the offense, he's like, AJ, Dallas, and Devontae, you guys know the offense runs through you. You need to play your role. And then he was like, John, like, happy to have you. You're having good practices. Your time will come, kind of thing. Like, my thing is like,
so he doesn't have a role.
Yeah, that's my thing. Like,
okay.
Do you think like offense is like the great like Peyton Manning offense with the Colts or the Brady offenses? Like, do you think those conversations were like that, where it's like, hey, you're a good playmaker, but you're not. We don't need you yet. Like, no, like bullshit. No. We need to spread the ball.
They found ways, and I would like to know when was that filmed? That moment where he was asking
after the Packers game or before
so
the Packers
he was
game. It was a
relatively new.
Yeah,
he was still relatively new. So like I can kind of see where Sirianni is coming from because it's week 1 at probably when that was said, and you're like, yeah, they will find a role. But okay, week 2, Britton Covey was the role. So you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. It gives me Aja a little bit.
It's like having Devin White on the defense. You're starting Zach Bond
right.
and Kobe Dean, and Devin White's being inactive. Like,
yeah, I mean, except his offensive coordinator doesn't hate him, but other than that, it's pretty similar. For me with Dotson and Eric, you're 1,000% right. Like that has to be done. You have to incorporate him. And the thing to me is, you look at Britton Covey, like you mentioned, he was so involved. Like that's exactly the type of way that you should be looking to involve Dotson. Just get him touches early on.
Right.
This is something that we saw, and this is going to be a terrible analogy. People are going to hate this. This is something that the Sixers saw with Tobias Harris, right? is that if you wanted to see him produce, and I'm not saying Dotson's going to be Harris or anything, but this is just a generic way to get guys who, whether they're new to the team or they struggle to get going, to get them going, so give them, feed them the ball early. Doc Rivers famously said for Joel Embiid, you got to feed the pig, right? So that's what you have to do here with Jahan Dotson. You got to get him touches early. You got to get him familiar with the offense. You have to, more importantly, get Jalen Hurts familiar with Jahan Dotson, right? And then from there, we can see what we got. The second that we found out that A.J. Brown was going to be out for yesterday's game, and he's obviously going to be out for tomorrow's game, possibly going to be out for next week's game, right? So we're looking at all this. That's the huge flag of like, hey, we got to get another receiver involved here. And Britton Covey just doesn't have the potential that a Jahan Dotson has, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I kind of feel opposite about that. I kind of feel like Covey is proven to be a better fit in the way that we kind of go back to the idea that he was supposed to look like Cole Beasley. Like I'm starting to turn around and say maybe it's Covey and maybe we did the thing and Dotson's probably.
But it's not.
I think
it's not bad that Covey's doing that right now. But I don't exactly correct me if I'm wrong. But like right now, where this offense is, like you have Devontae Smith. Like ideally, Dotson should be your wide receiver too. Like treat him like Devontae Smith. Treat Devontae like AJ at the moment.
Well, I think Cole Beasley is like an idealized scenario. We're talking about a guy who hasn't been involved in the offense like at all in previous years. So to expect him just to kind of like go out and be like a Cole Beasley, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think that there's that like generic slot white wide receiver, that could potentially be at play there. But like scared money don't make no money. Like how far are you going to go dinking and dunking to Cole Beasley, like right by the line of scrimmage? Like he was fine and he secured the ball 100%. But like, I'm more interested in potentially using him as like a Jason Avant type right now and trying to involve Dotson to actually get the offense going, because that's what the Eagles struggle with, was actually like they could methodically move it down the field, but you need to get the ball in a guy's hands who can make a play with it at the same time. So, some kind of, I know we don't love screens. We don't love screens in Philadelphia. We're tired of seeing them. But, some type of simplistic screen, not a bubble screen, anything but a bubble screen. But if we want to get like off movement, something like that, that's fine. If you want to even just run a simple slant, anything like that, but you just have to get that connection started. And it doesn't have to be all of Covey's, touches go to Jahan Dotson. But I'm just saying you have to split it up a bit more, equitably and a bit more evenly.
I feel you got to give Jalen that open field. And then I don't know if this is alarming to you guys, but how long do you think, like, is there a problem with how long Jalen's holding the ball? Because I have the answer right here. The amount of time the average time he had to throw the ball against Atlanta and against Green Bay, and I didn't know it was that long.
I don't think there's much of an issue, but I also don't think that like, okay, I kind of put that on, who's really stretching the field and creating separation and getting open, who's making it easy for him to release the ball.
Fair.
So I look at that. But what were the numbers?
Against Green Bay, he had an average time of 3 seconds to throw.
And he had more of his receivers available, and the line was kind of helping out there. So
in Atlanta, he nearly had 4 seconds.
Here's
he held the ball for 4 seconds back.
We remember against Green Bay how many times like there was like muffed snaps and all that stuff. So obviously during that game, you're like 3 seconds is a little bit long to hold on to the ball because not everything was looking smooth. It looks smoother against Atlanta, and he's had more time, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because
that's a lot of time back there.
Well, that's when Brown isn't in the game either.
Yeah.
Is he looking for a lane to start his run? Is he looking for a run out of the pass more often? And maybe that's where like is it is,
but I feel
is
like
it,
this is
him holding the ball, like him looking for a pass, or the amount of time it takes for him to cross the line?
I feel like the play calling is not doing him any favors, because he's not getting it. Like Kirk Cousins, we know there was no pass rush, right? But the ball was out of his hands within 2.8 seconds.
Right, because he knew where he wanted to go with the ball.
Exactly. If Jalen it's it's a complete opposite, where Jalen is like, where'd I go with the ball? And it feels like that. And he had to put the game on his back against Atlanta. But
yeah, he did. Yeah. And he had to be a lot more if he was going to make a play through the air, which I mean, geez, you didn't really see a ton of them. You know, you saw a few where you're like, all right, like, you know, he made a good throw there. Like it was nice to see. But yeah, I mean, as far as the time that he had versus kind of the output in the air, like, yeah, it's not necessarily the numbers you would expect.
Yeah, that's a bit alarming. I just feel like it says that the play calling is not doing him any favors, and nobody's getting enough separation from when he needs to release the ball.
He leads the league in time in the pocket, by the way.
It's a good thing. I think that's a, you know, if we're all going to find a positive out of this, it is highly of
he's not like failing like he used to. He's
right. There's that too.
Confident.
Yeah.
Well, it answers questions that we had early about the offensive line, and when AJ Brown does come back, it's encouraging for that scenario. I think for exactly the reason you brought up, Eric, I think it does say something about, you know, not only the play calling but also just the weapons on offense, right? You know, why aren't guys open, right? And so part of that is surely play calling. On top of that, you know, there I think is something to be said about guys getting open. So, you know, what I would like to see is if you're down AJ Brown, well, let's use Saquon Barkley in the receiving game more. Like, I understand that the theory of Dallas Goedert is that he's a top 5 tight end. Has not shown that lately. Mm-hmm. So if you're not going to lean on that, you know, if he's struggling to get open, let's lean on the guy that we know is a top, let's call it 3 receiving back in the NFL, or at least combo back. You know, let's talk about if we're having trouble getting that chemistry between John Dotson and Jalen Hurts. All right, well, you know, let's just keep it simple, put it in the hands of a playmaker close to the line of scrimmage, and let him go to work. If we're talking about, you know, Britton Covey not really being able to, just from a skill perspective, gain that much after the catch, you know, I think he's great at securing it. I think he's running tight routes, he's securing the ball. That's fantastic, but he's not really making, you know, signature plays there after the fact. A guy like Saquon Barkley can. So I think, as much as I hate to say it, and it's going to be very like Giants of us, you know, or Giants of the Eagles, I should say, like, right now you got to lean on Saquon Barkley, and you don't want to run him into the ground. But I think if you,
they should run the offense through him, ideally
space him out. And Kenny Gainwell's been fine. I think, you know, it's just that you don't necessarily want to, you know, pound him to the ground with him. But, you know, if you're splitting time, you know, rushing with Saquon and then, you know, throwing to Saquon, and then the biggest thing to me is that, you know, you want to make sure that you also maximize him in the red zone, because as electric as Saquon is, he's also your best back, you know, when you get down low. So just maximize his snaps and run the offense through him.
I agree. I don't disagree with that at all. And it makes sense, like, because you're seeing that in New Orleans, right, where they're running the ball and they're relying on play action to make these big passes. If there was any game that you have to get right, or any game that you have to, like, find who you are going to be this season, it is this game, because if you blow this game, you're 1-2, and people start to spiral out. I'm sorry, like, you don't want this team quitting so early on in the season. Like, you just don't want that, and you can't
it
afford
means
that.
You're heading into the bye week 500 at best.
Yes.
I'll give you this this like old school like coach approach, probably. Like you know, it matters that it, like, wins and losses, right? Obviously. But kind of to your point, Brian, I'm not expecting, you know, to spoil probably a prediction later. I'm not really expecting a win this week. I'm expecting to see this team compete, and how they compete against a team that's put up 91 points in 2 weeks. Like, defensively first and foremost, but how offense, if they can stay cleaned up for the most part without Brown in there, they're responsible with the ball. Because you're right, this is a proving ground game, win or loss. It depends how you go out there and play and execute. If you can keep this game close, then you're proving to, I think, a lot of people that, against the Falcons sucked with the way that it ended, but you're also proving that, you know, there is fight from the Eagles against a team that is just steamrolling their schedule so far, including the Dallas Cowboys, who, you know, at the end of the day here, it always feels like the Eagles and Dallas Cowboys are the main event in the NFC East. So yeah, like it matters. You're not you are hoping to win. You're more so looking for how this team competes against what looks like quality opponents, because that was the expectation, right? I think, and we'll probably do this like middle of the season, try to sit back and say, okay, like what are our updated predictions for maybe the record of the Eagles this year? But we started out, at least on my end, before the season started, saying 14-3. Well, no one, I don't think, had a loss to the Falcons in their predictions. So right now, the expectations have shifted mightily. You need to get that back. And that starts with gaining confidence in any sort of way. And even if it's a close loss to the Saints, like there is some confidence to be gained there. And if it's a win, then there's all the confidence to be gained there.
I completely agree. I definitely agree. This is the game where you can actually like this is a game that kind of boosts morale, right? The locker room, we don't know what the locker room is feeling right now, but we do know that Nick Sirianni's seat has gotten scorching hot because of that loss. Because no matter what, the fingers are going to be pointed at him at the end of the day, right?
I do think it is pointed at him at the end of the day. And if not, it's hard not to point a finger at Fangio for the last, like, the 2-minute drill. But at the same time, there's not enough how do you say? There's not enough examples to shorten the leash on him specifically, right?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so we did say Alvin Kamara is a player to watch in this game. I think we all agree on that, right? Philadelphia-wise, Zach did mention that ideally, like, the offense should start running through Saquon Barkley. Zach, is that your player to watch against the Saints for the Eagles?
No, actually. If we're talking offensively, right, I think the player to watch has to be Jalen Hurts, because the offense, while it should run through Saquon, it's always going to run through the quarterback. But if we're talking about a singular player throughout this entire game, the player that I'm going to be watching is Bryce Huff, because he's got to get it together. Yep. He has to disrupt that Saints offense. He has to get into the backfield. He's got to mess things up. He has to do something, because he has been nothing. I think he has a combined tackle. I think that's it. Like, people are calling him the new Agent Zero, and it's not because of his jersey number. Like, it's a problem. Like, this is a guy who has shown that he is talented. He's far better than he's played so far. He's talked about that he needs to be locked in better. Listen, dude, you're getting paid a lot of money. Like, you better get locked in, or like you're not going to maximize that money. Like, I know it sounds like a lot when agents phrase it, and even 1 million is obviously a lot. Not everything's guaranteed in that contract. Like, you seriously are losing yourself money if you continue to play like this. And not only that, but like, he's still, I know he's not young, but he's young enough that he could have a contract after this. You are costing yourself millions of dollars, because you're playing yourself into a position where who even knows? I mean, I have to double check the dead cap situation, but who even knows if you're still going to be playing a year, 2 years from now, if you're still playing like this. Like, that is when I'm not here to overreact. I'm not here to give hot takes or stuff like that. That is just how badly he is playing. So for me, I need to see literally anything out of Bryce Huff. I need to see signs of life. So he's my player to watch.
Dead cap in 2024, just to put it out there, is $34 million.
I agree with you what you're saying, Zach, and Huff hasn't shown anything. But I want to ask this point as well, based on scheme of the defense. How many times, like, would you say, is it more often than not that Huff is rushing versus dropping back to help coverage?
I feel like he's dropping back
because last year we had that same complaint against Reddick, how he was chasing sacks, but he was supposed to drop back, and it's the same defensive philosophy. So that's my question.
Well, so it's funny that you bring that up, because Vic Fangio has actually spoken about it, and not in so many words, but specifically saying that what they need to do is teach Huff to play the position and not just rush the quarterback.
And that's
I think that speaks to your point, Eric.
Exactly.
So they got a player that doesn't really fit the defense.
That's kind of what I'm getting at, because it's like, yeah, he has zero, but also he's not playing his strength, kind of, for the most part. So,
but here's the thing: even when he's doing the things that naturally suit his talent, like his skill set or what he's shown in the past, he's still not succeeding. Like, you're talking about a guy who's not getting any movement on the line when he's rushing. And I understand that he's not rushing as much. Like, The percentage of his snaps that he's rushing is not the same as it was last year with the Jets. But you're talking about a guy who's seeing a near 0% success rate. And, you talk about a guy like Nolan Smith, who I think at this point is looking far more likely to be a bust than not.
Another Marcus
Say
Smith.
what you will. He can't, he has no strength. He doesn't have any moves in his arsenal. He's at least beating guys with speed. And when I say beaten, he's getting, run off, before he can even get close to the quarterback. But still, he's getting that far. Bryce Huff's not even getting that far. And it's honestly, it's disgusting. I can't watch it anymore.
On Monday night, I know that Jalix Hunt was finally active. How did he? I didn't see. I don't know how many snaps he had, but I guess the question I want to pose: no snaps. Okay.
No snaps.
Well, so more so this kind of piggybacking off of Zach's point here with Nolan Smith and his struggles. Is there an opportunity that we think tomorrow that we're going to see Jalix Hunt get some snaps if he's active in the lineup? Because maybe that would, we gotta start figuring out early who's going to do what.
And you make that's a perfect idea, right? Because you're already limiting Bryce Huff snaps to Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham, we all love Graham. Like if he could play all the snaps, we would say that, hey, have him play all the snaps. But to be honest, like you don't want to wear him down because Graham is going to be very crucial down the stretch. You should
even
test
though
it out
he's arguably been the best defensive lineman, which is crazy.
Absolutely, hands down.
Yep.
But you should test out Jalix Hunt the same way you tested out Thomas Booker, right? That's his name.
Booker last week, very low snap count, actually had a pretty impactful game.
He was efficient. Like, this is the time where you want to test these guys out. If Jalix Hunt ends up working out better than Huff, then shit. Like, somebody needs to have a conversation with Howie and Vic Fangio in the same room, and it needs to be recorded as an ESPN 30 for 30. Because now there's a big disconnect where you're signing guys to signing guys. That's at this point. Like, it's not a scheme fit. And it just you see it. It's just not a scheme fit. Yeah. You had all off season to prepare for this role. Like, what were you guys doing? If you're not ready, if you haven't learned this role yet, like I get it. Like, it takes time, but there should be a little bit of progress. And they played preseason snaps on defense. Like, Vic Fangio started the defensive players.
Yeah.
So what are we missing here?
We're just missing the consistency, and and on paper you'd think that you should have that consistency. I mean, honestly, like when you look at the names of who is on this defensive, line on paper, you think it should be better than this, straight up. Like we got a comment here. Jonathan Harvey, Pittsburgh made Cousins look rusty and retired. The Eagles made Cousins look like he's worth the pay received. Well, yeah. Well, Pittsburgh had a pass rush, and to go along with that, Watt. and to go along with that, there is a little bit of a defense overall that appeared in that game versus kind of what happened in the second half. Well, I'll say that it really wasn't any rush, but the second half made it to the point where even if you tried to put a rush out there, it wasn't going to really work. Like, and it's kind of ironic that I'm pretty sure Booker had his play in the second half too. So it tells me it was more of an individual effort by that stage of the game. But yeah, I mean, you look at these kind of things, and Philadelphia is just straight up underachieving. It's what it is, and that can be said about any part of the defense. I look at the defense, and it was one of the things that we were very excited about starting this season. Looking at training camps, things like that, preseason. And then, the game starts going, and it's just like, ooh, Green Bay, yeah, you had a turnover by Blankenship. But, you got burnt so many times where, I mean, geez, I've been calling out Gardner Johnson since game one. And then he makes a good stuff on Robinson, but also, there's other bits of execution that take away the flowers as soon as you gave them. It's rough. It's a rough watch, and this is one of these teams tomorrow, the Saints, that are just going to, hey, the first couple of games, those teams maybe don't make you pay for it as much. The Saints will.
That is very true. Very true in every regard.
But I did forget to actually put in my player of the game. Now I just realized that. Let me just let me think for a second.
All right. Why do you think? I'll say mine because I didn't get to say mine either yet, and I completely forgot about that.
For sure. Go ahead.
My player to watch is going to be Smitty. We've all praised the fact that he's the he's a wide receiver 1A, right? Wide receiver 1B, whatever case may be. The Eagles need him to be crucial in this game. Like, I don't know if it's not him not getting separation or him and Jalen just not on the same page just yet because it's early on. But the Eagles need Devontae Smith to be as dominant as he can be to open up passing lanes for Jahan Dotson, for Brent Covey. Like, we're seeing way too many. I feel like we're seeing way too many passes around the line of scrimmage. We're not seeing a lot of what's it called? We're not seeing a lot of deep passes this season. If AJ Brown hasn't been in the game, is Eric frozen or is he not blinking?
I should be fine.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Can you hear
for
me?
Sure. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I don't know why the picture is frozen, but anyway, as long as you can hear me, then this podcast is still working.
All right. But yeah, that's my player to watch about this, man. It's just a funny picture.
At least I have a shit-eating grin on my face. It's fine. Yeah, I will still give, even though the words don't match to mouth. Obviously, probably stays like this for the next half hour. That'll be great. Yeah, so mine's going to be Quinyon Mitchell. I think you can sit there and there's another option I was going to point at. I was going to make Morgan proud and say probably Milton Williams, but my go-to is going to be Quinyon Mitchell because the Eagles, to still stay competitive on defense against the Saints, they're going to have to steal possessions, and Quinyon Mitchell is so close to doing it on Monday against the Falcons. So if those pass breakups turn into turnovers, then that would be a big help for the Eagles. Just to kind of put the offense back on the field and maybe make some more room on the scoreboard if they have that kind of execution. But you're kind of asking, there has to be turnovers in general, because if there's not turnovers, you're asking the defense to stay on the field for longer, and that's just hasn't been a good recipe for the first 2 weeks.
I completely agree, and that'd be great to see him have he's been pretty damn good. I think he's he's tied for the most pass deflections in the league in the season so far with 4. Keys to the game. I feel like we kind of mentioned this before, stopping a run. Outside of that, do you guys see anything that needs to happen for Philadelphia to have an advantage in this game?
I mean, for me, defensively, it's not allowing the Saints to get over the top on you. So what that looks like is a combination of being in position first and foremost. That's something that we haven't really seen from either Reed or from CJ. If CJ even plays, mind you, because he is still questionable heading into the game. So what does the safety room look like that they can make sure that New Orleans cannot get over the top there? That's going to be, one huge thing there. But on top of that, again, offensively, play to your stars. That's the thing. So I think what that looks like is, I think that looks like a lot of rushing. I think that looks at a lot of utilization of Saquon. That looks like Jalen on the ground. We're talking about, I think the strategy that they had against Atlanta is not the worst when you talk about those long methodical drives. I think that plays well. And yes, Eric, you're back with us. I think that plays well to the strength of this Eagles offense without AJ. I don't think you can go shot for shot with New Orleans. It's something that I think you have to, stay true to your own skill set. And without AJ Brown, this is the offense's best skill set. So utilizing Barkley, working methodically down the field, giving your defense ample time to rest, and not allowing, the Saints offense to kind of get into a groove, because, if you let them go off for an explosive play and then you have a 3 and out because you're trying to match them and then they're back on the field, that offense is high. That offense is ready to go. And that's what you really can't allow happen if you're Philadelphia.
Just Brian, before I left to come back in, what was the question that you were asking, Zach?
So keys to the game outside of Alvin Kamara that we discussed earlier.
Oh yeah, for the Saints. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Zach probably already tackled this, but if you are going to be trying to move the ball with Barkley, you're taking on a defensive line that can stop the run, has been known to stop the run, because Saints have been doing that for the past few seasons. They've been doing it pretty well. So if they can, if we can somehow overcome that, I guess is the best way to say it. I'm going to probably butcher his name, but Kalen Saunders is out. So you have a piece of what would be the starting defensive line for the Saints that you can kind of, try to tackle that area with Barkley. But you have also a offensive coordinator that should be able to get Barkley away from running down the middle, running the outside, and doing some things to kind of pick up yardage in creative ways, whether it's a screen, whether, it's a flat or, a wheel, whatever it may be, you're going to be looking for those sorts of ways to try to get Barkley to move the ball, because without moving the ball or without committing to the run, there is no pass, and you need to have the pass open when you're missing Brown. So this is going to be a collective effort from the Eagles offense, but you're going to have to start by, I think, attacking the defensive line for the Saints. So that's, I think, the key to the game and pertaining to the Saints and how the Eagles should go about it.
I think that's very fair. I feel like if you control the clock, I mean, wow. If you control the clock, yeah, that happened. Control the clock.
I didn't hear it. Don't know what you're talking about.
You got to pronounce that L, bro.
If you control the clock against the Saints, I feel like you're in the driver's seat to definitely pull off an upset. But I want to see this defense make the Saints one-dimensional, and I want to see them either take out the passing game or take out Kamara. Like, let one flourish and have Derek Carr, like, put this game in the lap of Derek Carr. Stop putting this game in the lap of the scheme, right? Zach mentioned earlier, they run really good, and then they run play action off of that. Very basic offense. They're doing what you're supposed to be doing. They're just doing it really damn good because they have great playmakers. But I'm curious to see, like, hey, if you allow for if you allow for Kamara to run a bit on you, but you stop the pass, like, ideally, like, you're almost shutting down the Saints offense. Or if you allow them to become one-dimensional, just passing the whole time, then you're stopping Kamara. Like, that, it's an easy win for the Eagles. And we've seen this, like, this team shouldn't have been in the game against the Packers with those turnovers, but they pulled off the win, right? They struggled against the Falcons. They almost pulled off a win, but hey, it bit them in the ass. The same thing that happened in 2023. At some point, you gotta have that killer instinct in you, like, hey, like, you can't be a team with you can't be a mediocre team with great players. Like, that makes zero sense. We gotta figure this out. It's either you're a great team with great players and that's gonna be great, or you guys really just gonna be subpar and just be one of those teams that just ride into the sunset because you're riding all tackling alone. There's got to be more to this. And I feel like just defensively, that's my spotlight. That's my key to the game. I want to see the defense step up, stop the run, make the Saints one-dimensional, make them panic a little bit because no other team has made them panic. Just do that. I didn't say it's an easy win for the Eagles. I said it's an easy win if you stop the run.
Yeah, I still don't believe it's I don't know, man, because here's the deal. You stop the run, right? You still have Kamara in the pass. You got Rashid Shaheed and you got Chris Olave. So there was a lot less going on with the Falcons. That's kind of where I go, where my mind goes to on that.
We're also talking about Alvin Kamara, who's one of the best receiving backs in the NFL. So
I was gonna say, obviously, I'm not. I would say definitely when it comes down to it, I would take in a receiving running back, kind of label. I would take Kamara over Barkley even.
Just straight as a receiver, I would agree. As a rusher, and Kamara is very talented.
Right on the other side.
That's where Saquon gets the edge. I think we're in agreement there. But as a receiver, I mean. We talk about guys like Saquon's obviously talented, but I think Kamara's in a league above. I mean, Kamara is in that league with guys like Christian McCaffrey, I feel like, as a receiver, which is insane. That's the top echelon of receiving backs in the NFL. So, I think that it's, and technically, yes, you did say it'd be an easy win. Not that you're predicting an easy win, but if you stop the run, it'll be it'll be an easier win for the team. If they kill the entire offense of the New Orleans Saints,
I'm not a Giants fan. Can we kill this idea?
No, he's a Giants fan.
I'm not a Giants fan. Let's kill this idea because the narrative is getting overblown.
I love, my favorite thing was when Brian was subtweeted by another show.
Discrediting our show.
Brian literally is the reason. He was like, I think you guys should sign Daniel Jones. That's how you know he's a Giants fan. Which, thank you, Brian.
That's how you know. What a mess. As bad as it gets here, you know, can you imagine being Brian can't, but can you imagine being a Giants fan? I mean, just awful to have Daniel Jones as your QB, and you gotta feel bad for Malik Neighbors because I mean that kid can play for sure.
I'll put it this way. You know, for all the talk that we had just a little bit earlier on the same show about like, oh, how long did it take for you to get over to Eagles loss? I was like, well, you know, I had to remind myself I could be a Giants fan. I could be Brian.
It can always be worse. You can always be Brian.
I'm not commenting on the stupidity that's happening within the chat and the show. Yes, if you stop the run, it's a very tough ask, Marshawn. I completely get that, and I completely understand that. But listen.
I mean, if someone Tanya Harding to Alvin Kamara in the parking lot, we'd have a pretty good chance of winning the game on Sunday.
I'm just saying, like, listen,
they still got Olave and Rashid, so I'm not sure.
that's fair.
I'm not sure, dude.
Life finds a way, and the Eagles find a way.
Did you see that guy Mooney? Did you see Mooney, dude?
Perception, right? The Eagles face the Packers. The Packers have the greatest fantasy player of all time in Jaden Reed. They have Christian Watson. They have Romeo Dubs, and they have Josh Jacobs. They made the Packers a bit one-dimensional when they were stopping Jacobs in the first half. Like Jacobs couldn't get a run off of them, and they were holding down the Packers. I feel like if you do that with the Saints, you're in a better position to have a win. It's not a guaranteed win, but you're in the driver's seat in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean that would be the game plan to put in a winning effort for sure.
So we're going predictions?
Yeah, but I feel like Zach's screen might be froze like how I was. Oh, no never mind. He's just over there.
No, I'm looking through our fantasy football chat, if I'm being honest.
No, we're not doing it.
Is he trying to find out whose words those were?
I'm finding the truth. You know, as a journalist, integrity means everything to me. So
yeah,
with that in mind, in the interest of
I
integrity,
got DMs that
I am looking to see what exactly was said or not said.
Oh, there's your truth, my truth, and then there's Brian being a Giants fan. So there's
bro.
there's your truth. All right, you know what?
Been a division rival one time, and that's what happens.
Maybe Brian wants to start off predictions to just make this moment pass.
You know what? Yeah, F it. Like let's cause a little chaos, since everybody thinks I'm losing at this point.
Oh, jeez.
I think Philadelphia actually upsets the Saints because it doesn't fit the narrative, right? Eagles are struggling. Eagles are not a Super Bowl contender anymore because they're struggling for the last 2 weeks to actually have that killer instinct. Offense is not producing the way it would if AJ Brown was around. Saquon Barkley's dropping passes. Nick Sirianni can't call a play to save his life. I'm not trying to look like Brian Daboll. The stupidity that's going on out of Marshawn Lynch's mouth right now is insane.
Marshawn Lynch, dude, you're nailing it, man.
Martian, yeah, I said Marshawn. What's it called? I do think that they upset the Saints. I'm gonna go with 38-35. I think it's gonna be one of those games. Like we've seen Philadelphia keep these high producing offenses to a limited scoring balance. Like this is something that it fits into Philly's hands, and it's just a matter of like, hey, we don't want to mess up the way we did so last week.
I'm gonna go and not pick the Eagles for the first time this season. Where's everybody? Where's Jay Fizz and Duck? I'm not picking Eagles, so you know what that means.
I think Duck is in there. I think Duck's
no Jay Fizz today. That's
But no, I think the Saints. God, it's going to be a high scoring game, but I don't have any reason to believe it's going to be coming from the Eagles side of things. So yeah, Saints 33, Eagles 20. Yeah. And it's just based on what we've seen for the first 2 weeks. Again, you do hope that there's a better compete level and the game is tighter than that. So, again, like going back to the point I made earlier, I'm not necessarily looking for a win. Obviously, you want that, but you're not necessarily looking for it. What you're looking for here is, can the Eagles bounce back from a terrible finish and compete against a team that's good? And if they can do that, it restores a little bit of faith. If they can get the win and do that, then that's awesome. But my prediction is 33, 20 for the Eagles. For the Saints to beat the Eagles, I should say.
Yeah. Before I get to my prediction, I just would like to share this that we did have in the fantasy chat. And now,
who said that? Because I don't remember saying that at all.
For the unveiling of who actually said it, it was Tim.
Oh,
yeah, okay. So again, not even your words, but certainly not mine.
Brian.
And by the way, Jaden Reed's been traded twice in 2 weeks because nobody understands what I'm telling you. Dude.
Brian taking the words Tim put in Eric's mouth.
Tim goes, "I'm going to trade him. I don't need him." And then it's like, I'm out for blood. And then like you try to make a trade, he's like, "No, I'm drunk in Wildwood." That's the analysis going on here with the Jaden Reed stuff.
Effectively. But as it comes to the game itself, right? Eric, you and I aren't thinking too dissimilarly. I don't think this is necessarily going to be a fun game. I think we're looking at a double-digit loss for Philadelphia here. Yeah. I'm thinking 34-24 New Orleans.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense, and you kind of hate to say that, more than a possession, for the expectations you have of this team coming into the season, but based on what we've seen so far, it's a tough stretch, because then after, kind of like Jonathan's naming here, this is why competing and figuring out what this team is in week 3 matters, because week 4, you got Tampa Bay, and they kicked you out of the playoffs last season. So if you're calling it back into that game with no idea of who you are, low morale, not guaranteed to have Brown back, and it's not a good look to start the season. You got to start digging deep now.
If the Eagles do lose this game, I know it's early on in the season, but at what point do we start discussing the fact that the Eagles need better leadership and at the top of the coaching staff?
I mean, I would start to say that this season, like I know last season I was kind of saying, hey, I was kind of more hesitant and holding off about it. Brian's been kind of driving the point home about Sirianni for a while now. This season, I would say, hey, it's time to quote unquote shit or get off the pot.
If they move on from Nick Sirianni, and I hate to end the show like this, right? I mean, I don't really hate it. But if they were to move off Nick Sirianni, ideally, like the
absolutely
coordinators.
not. I thought you were going to bring up Bill Belichick. No,
I was just saying.
I was. I wanted to be chaotic and bring it up. I definitely wanted to.
Yes, I agree, Martian. He should have been fired last January. Do the coordinators stay? Like, are you actually going to put your franchise quarterback in a position where he's going to go on another offensive coordinator in so many years?
No, if you bring in an offensive-minded head coach, he might keep Fangio, but I don't think that Kellen Moore stays unless you make him the head coach, which I don't think would happen either.
Okay. I think Kellen Moore would be if of all the coordinators here, obviously all like 2, but I think Kellen Moore is the one that would have to stay. Would make the most sense to stay,
because you want to keep him around for at least for Jalen's sake. Like,
right?
You want to see that.
Now, if he becomes head
bring
coach,
in a guy who has,
But so, like, all right, let me just say this real quick. So let's just say that Fangio isn't it either. What is the opportunity?
He's not going nowhere. The whole hometown story that Jeffrey Lurie loves and adores, Fangio's not going anywhere.
Look, the whole production story that I actually value. Look, here's the deal. And I know Zach was like absolutely not on the Belichick thing. What if Belichick's a defensive coordinator and not a head coach?
Belichick sounds, the way he's talking this season, it sounds like he knows something about
a job. That's
it sounds like he knows something about like Philly.
No, he's
No, it
focusing
sounds
a
like he
lot on
knows something
Philly.
like he's
Right.
going to coach the Cowboys next year. Like that's
I
what it
don't know.
sounds
He's
like.
talking about. The other day he was saying that Philadelphia fans love him. Fly Eagles
Yeah,
fly.
because he means that honestly. Yeah, and he was in a commercial with Tyrese Maxey. I get it. Yeah, none of that matters. He's not coming to Philadelphia. If anything, he's going to Dallas. And if he comes to Philadelphia, just separately, not that it's necessarily a deal breaker for anyone. I don't see any way Vic Fangio stays under Bill Belichick.
Oh God, that means we're getting the Stooges, isn't it?
So Zach, real quick, since Bill Belichick was in a commercial with Tyrese Maxey, what's the opportunity that Bill Belichick actually takes over Maury's role?
I mean, probably more likely than coming to Philadelphia, because the other major issue with that, and by coming to Philadelphia, I mean the Eagles, of course, because the other issue with that is,
I was like, I don't know.
the odds that he's gonna want to come here without Howie Roseman being displaced, and the odds of Howie Roseman being displaced are not
praised
overly
Howie.
high.
Oh, time out now. He praised Howie Roseman and all that he's done. He called Howie.
Sure, of course he did, because he's being political and keeping everyone in good favor. It
He
doesn't mean that
praised the
he's not
Bryce
gonna
Huff
want.
signing.
It doesn't mean he's not going to want. Well, first of all, are we campaigning for Bill Belichick to take the job based off praising the Bryce Huff signing?
No. I'm just saying. It sounds like he's advocating for Howie Roseman. Like, there's nobody in this world that's going to replace Howie Roseman at the end of the day. Like, no coach that's going to come in is
And
going
that's
to
the problem,
push him out
because
again.
Bill Belichick is going to want roster control over the next franchise that he goes to.
All right, well, then give me Ben Johnson.
Yeah,
Actually,
I agree.
I think Martian Lynch brought up a really good point there. Does that mean Bill is Dipset now because Cameron was in
That's it. What happened to this show?
that? I think that's a really good point. Because maybe he was just like, I'm pro Dipset, and like maybe it doesn't matter at all. I would just kind of like to see Bill Belichick have something to do with basketball, because I think his coaching style would be exactly like what Tim Robinson said in the NBA song. Give me the basketball so I can dunk it, dude. That's it. That's a game plan.
Bill Santana. Oh God.
It's fun. We're having fun.
Does that make Josh McDaniels like Jim Jones? Like,
There's a lot going on there. There's a lot going on here.
all right, we're gonna end the show now. We gave our predictions. Zach and Eric on the belief that Saints will win. I'll stand by the Eagles and say that Eagles will pull this out. Other than that, after tomorrow's game, as my dog makes all the noise in the world, we'll be back on Tuesday night to recap the game. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy your Sunday. Don't let the Eagles losing ruin your Sunday. Just enjoy it.
Dang. So he said the Eagles are going to win, and then said, don't let the Eagles lose and ruin your Sunday. God dang.
All you got to say is go Birds. That's all you got to say.
I'm just,
all you have to say is
as a journalist and analyst, I got to, go Birds.